due to your son's openness about his bisexuality, that was an issue.
Let me say something to you.
Carlos King sat down with Kirk Franklin to discuss his relationship with his son, the conversation between NLE and Jonathan Majors, and the Bible.
When was the last time you questioned God?
I believe that I will always have questions, and I have questions daily. I have doubts and fears daily. But what I have also concluded is that what I don't know does not cancel out what I do know.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen too much for it to just be random luck, and for it to be coincidence, for it to be something that is just imaginary, something that was just myth, that was rewritten thousands and thousands of years ago just to be able to be controversial and to be more of a medieval narrative. But I've seen enough and experienced enough to know that if there's a watch, there's a watchmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just even the creation of the universe it's too perfect, and the genius of it, down to the amount of oxygen, down to the amount of the tilting of the earth, so that life can even exist on our planet.
This is a good question. Sometimes I think people look at Christians and think that we never have questions, and that just isn't the case. Christians have questions too. And while we may wrestle with the answers to those questions, or in some cases, the lack of answers, we understand that God is in control, and he has proven time and time and again, he has a proven track record that he can be trusted. So while the questions don't go away, we can trust in the one who is in control. We do this in other areas of our lives. When we get on a plane, you don't know everything about how that plane works, but we choose to trust the expertise of the people who made it. Same thing when you drive your car. You don't know how it all works, but you choose to trust the expertise of the people who made it. You do so because those things have a consistent track record of working a certain way. I like how Kirk says this. Not knowing something doesn't negate what you do know. Based on what we have discovered through science, we know that the universe had a beginning. That means space, matter, and time all came into existence. The question we have to ask ourselves is what best accounts for this. There are a lot of different theories out there. The evidence demands an explanation. What best accounts for the world that we see? I personally think the watchmaker analogy is a great analogy. If you found a watch on the beach, its complexity and purpose would lead you to conclude it was made by a watchmaker. You wouldn't assume it formed there by chance. While there have been many attempts to refute this analogy or this argument, I think the argument still stands. What Kirk Franklin goes on to describe is what Christians call the fine-tuning or the teleological argument. Everything in our universe has to be so precise in order for life as we know it to exist. If those numbers were just slightly off, nothing would exist, nothing would form. The tilting of the earth is one of those things that we don't think about. It's something that we take for granted, even when you hear people engage in the teleological or fine-tuning argument. I don't think it gets highlighted enough. But if the tilting of the earth was slightly off, I'm talking about the smallest number you can think of, we wouldn't be here. For life to form, these numbers have to be very precise.
You know, there's people who say, due to your son's openness about his bisexuality, that was an issue.
Let me say something to you. I am a lover of every human. I love people. I love people. I have people that will be able to stand with me on any platform and to say that Kirk Franklin shows us love. Kirk Franklin shows people love. You may have heard that even.
I've heard nothing different than that.
Yes.
It's always been that.
Yes.
Even today, I feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I want people to see Jesus in me. That's what I want people to see. I've said to my children when they were younger, my son and I've had some beautiful conversations when he was a young boy. Beautiful conversations. And I told my son, there will never be any situation in your life that I will ever stop loving you. I will love who you love. And I will stand where you stand. We may not always agree.
Carlos is asking all the hard questions. This is very personal, and you can tell that this is stuff for Kirk Franklin to talk about. I think Kirk's answer is a great response. As Christians, we are called to love people. This is what Jesus modeled for us, and this is how we are to live our lives. In the gospel, Jesus tells his disciples to love one another as he has loved them. How does Jesus love us? He loves us perfectly, sacrificially, by giving his life for us. Jesus goes on to say, greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. Jesus loves people. So as his followers, we ought to love people. Unfortunately, the church hasn't always done a great job of this. I think it's also worth mentioning that this isn't the case with all churches. There are a lot of churches that are loving people well. I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that when Jesus was asked by the religious leaders what the greatest commandment was, he answered with, love God and love people. Sometimes Christians, in their zeal, end up acting just like the Pharisees Jesus was calling out. That the LGBT community would say this about Kirk Franklin is amazing. This is a great testimony of who he is and reflects Jesus. What Kirk Franklin said to his son is what all fathers ought to be saying to their kids. Our kids need to hear that we love them. And no matter what, we will always love them. Not perfectly, because we are not God, but just reminding them that they don't have to earn your love. I think the last thing he says is very important. You don't get the sense that he is co-signing this way of living or that he doesn't think that it's not sinful. While he may not agree with his son's choices, he loves him nonetheless and will continue to be there for him. Loving people doesn't mean you agree with everything they say or do. In fact, I would say telling someone they are wrong or doing something sinful is the most loving thing you can do. It shows that you care about their eternal destiny and are willing to do something about it.
Often go viral with that. And recently you went viral because the show had this moment between NLE Choppa and Jonathan Majors and the whole thing about the Bible.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that? Because I'm pretty sure you had no idea that that was going to be the main thing that, till this day, is still being talked about.
So this last episode is, I think what was very interesting is that, you know, there are even people in my community that criticize me that I don't evangelize as much, or that I didn't lead him to Christ in that moment, or that I didn't, you know, make clear the gospel at that very moment. And I think that what my community has to understand, that Den is not a Christian show. I'm a Christian, but Den is not a Christian show. And I try to find the moments that I'm able to implement my faith, while at the same time having moments to also implement my faith by doing something else, allowing people to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Allowing people to speak is also Christ-like. Bible says, be quick to listen and slow to speak. So I'm allowing people to speak. And before I could respond, Jonathan responded. So after Jonathan responded about, have you read your Bible, read it again, I wasn't going to tag team on that and then make it a thing where now there's this kind of double teaming on theology for a moment. That just was a moment. And a lot of these journeys that we have with people when it comes to discipleship, a lot of it happens when the camera is off.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times, church folk, we want everything to happen in real time in front of us.
That moment between NLE Choppa and Jonathan Majors was intense. It was a controversial take, and Jonathan Majors' response was timely. I think some of the criticism that Kirk receives is unfair. Christians collectively don't evangelize as much as they should. That's not just Kirk Franklin, that's the church as a whole. The criticism about not using that opportunity to lead NLE Choppa to Christ shows ignorance from the people saying that. In those conversations, people may not be ready to give their lives to Christ. Maybe they just need to be challenged to rethink their views. There's always this push to get to the gospel. And don't get me wrong, I understand why. But for some people, telling them the gospel isn't what's best in that moment. They're not ready to hear it. They don't want to hear it. And they'll just flat out reject it. I appreciate that he makes clear that the show isn't a Christian show. I think people sometimes tune in to his podcast thinking that he's going to be out there preaching to these guys. That's not the goal of the podcast. The goal for them is to have conversations on topics impacting men, particularly Black men. That being said, Jonathan Majors' response has got to be one of the best responses of all time. It's not just what he said, but how he said it and the timing. I think Kirk's approach was the best approach in this situation. Jonathan Majors had already hit him with a zinger. Is it really necessary to pile it on? At the very least, this should push him to look into it a bit more. And based on what I've seen, it seems like NLE Choppa might be changing his view on some of this. But in this situation, doubling down probably wouldn't have been helpful. It's a group setting. Now it's two of y'all. It's going to cost him to be defensive. And when someone has their guards up, it doesn't matter what you say, it's not getting through. I like how he emphasizes discipleship. Discipleship is going to happen on a more intimate level, more one-on-one and less in a group setting. Oftentimes, the best way to reach people is to do life with them, to be in their world, to invite them into your world. And the way to do that is by having a relationship with them. Now, I don't think that Kirk Franklin and NLE are on that level, at least not yet. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.